participants, welcome to the second session, today's second session. We have with us Professor PM Pandey from IIT Delhi. So first let me introduce him. Professor PM Pandey is currently working at IIT Delhi. He has completed his BTech degree from HBTI Kanpur in 1993. He has completed his MTech from IIT Kanpur in 1995 with specialization in manufacturing science. He has served HBTI Kanpur as a faculty member for approximately 8 years. He has also completed PhD in the area of additive manufacturing, that is 3D printing from IIT Kanpur in 2003. He has joined IIT Delhi as faculty member in 2004 and is presently serving as professor at IIT Delhi. Professor Pandey has diversified research areas in the field of micro and nano finishing, micro deposition, also continued working in the area of 3D printing. He has supervised around 32 PhD theses and more than 36 MTech theses in last 10 years. He has filed 21 Indian patent application and has approximately 185 international journal paper and 45 international and national referred conference paper to his credit. These papers have been cited for more than 6,300 times, that is 6,300 times with a H index 39. He received highly commended paper award by Rapid Prototyping Journal for the paper fabrication of three-dimensional open porous regular structure of PA 2200 for enhanced strength of scaffold using selective laser sintering, published in 2017. Many of his BTech and MTech supervised projects have been awarded by IIT Delhi. He is a recipient of Outstanding Young Faculty Fellowship at IIT Delhi, sponsored by Kusuma Trust, and J.M. Mahajan Outstanding Teacher Award of IIT Delhi. Sir, I request you to kindly deliver today's lecture. Pandey sir.
Okay, thank you. So, Yogesh ji, so this is second day, huh?
Yes, sir.
Third day. Or how many lectures have been happened? कितने lecture हो गए हैं?
6 till now, sir. 6.
अच्छा, so
excluding inaugural.
Excluding?
Inaugural.
अच्छा अच्छा 6 lecture अलग से हो चुके हैं, ठीक है.
Yes.
तो इनको so what should I will talk about, say, in industry 4.0, है ना?
Yes.
And I will talk about the role of industry 4.0 and additive manufacturing together for shaping the future of a nation. So ये आपके participants कहाँ से हैं? आप लोग थोड़ा बोल सकते हैं, 5 मिनट जरा मुझे अंदाजा लग जाए, 1 मिनट. So participants को allowed है बोलना, जरा उनको कहिए, जरा सामने आए एक बार. वीडियो भी ऑन कर सकते हैं.
Participant, if you can switch on your video as well as mic, please introduce yourself. Some of you. Otherwise, I will tell, sir, they are from all over India actually. So, like.
Good morning, sir.
Yes.
Hello.
Good morning, sir. This is Dr. Balakrishnan from M. Kumarasamy College of Engineering, Karur, Tamil Nadu.
Okay, so have you heard my lecture earlier?
No, sir. This is my first time.
Okay, so how many of you have heard my lecture earlier also?
Hello.
Yeah.
This question is for me?
No,
Or
it's a
all
general question
participants?
I'm asking.
Yes.
Say, how many of you have heard your lecture? How many of you have heard this lecture earlier also? Hello? How many? How
Yes.
many of you? Yeah.
Mostly are saying it is their first time, sir. They are sending in chat.
Acha. Okay.
Even for me, sir, also this is the first time.
No,
I am
because
listening.
what is happening now, I am almost every week, 2-3
Yes.
lectures are there going on this Atal, this thing, na, FDP.
But sir, they are not allowing. If participants have attended one program, na, they are not allowing another program with the same title.
Okay.
So it will be first time for them.
Okay. Chaliye, good. So I am sharing my screen, and I will start talking about this thing. So okay, so let me share my screen now. So screen has been shared.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So
Perfectly.
what do you see? Like, do you see
Industry
this?
4.0,
Yeah.
the fourth
So
industrial revolution.
this is the title of
Shaping.
my thesis, this presentation. That is the shaping the future of nation using smart and additive manufacturing. Correct. So
Yes.
this is the topic, title of today's talk. So mainly in this talk, I would like to emphasize on smart manufacturing and additive manufacturing, and I'll try to show you the importance of the two, that how they are important to shape the manufacturing of a country, and how they can actually affect the GDP of the country, growth of the country. So that's the objective. So let me start with Industry 4.0, correct? So the first thing which I would like to talk about, Industry 4.0. Yeah, बताइए कुछ कह रहे हैं?
Sir, you can minimize this black screen which is coming upper corner. You can minimize.
Yeah.
Yes. No.
So this is the Industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. So I'll tell you now. First, let me start with that. What is Industry 4.0? And so first industrial revolution. Now the first industrial revolution was when, like earlier, it was at the end of, I'll say, 18th century, correct? So people have developed some primitive machines. Some machines were there at that time, but all those machines which were developed, they were primitive machines, I'll say, and the power was, they were either driven by the muscular power of human beings, or they were driven by the cattle powers. So when James Watt developed its steam engine, correct? Then people tried to use the power of water or steam to run those machines. At the same time, there was a development of steel industry, textile industry, correct? So the modern machine tools were developed, and they were driven by the steam engines or maybe water power. So that was the time we called it as first industrial revolution. So the key word for first industrial revolution is the mechanization. So mechanization means when the human muscular power or cattle power that was substituted by the water power or steam power. So that was known as mechanization. Now the second industrial revolution was about production line. That was a continuous production, means people started doing the mass production. So a particular component or a particular product was produced in mass, and the concept of continuous production on a production line, that was introduced. So the technological electrification, production line mass production, globalization, use of engines and turbines, and broad adaptation of telegraph, gas, water power supply. These together, so here the key word is the mass production, continuous line mass production. So this has brought the second industrial revolution in the society. Now, in the third revolution, which is not very old, it started around 1970s or so. So in the third industrial revolution, the human mental effort, like in the first industrial revolution, human muscular effort, that was replaced by steam power or water power. But the human mental effort, that was substituted or replaced by the electronics. That was the development of microprocessors. So the development of computer, digital manufacturing, that is numerical control machine tools, programming logic controllers, some robots, digitization, low cost automation, development of all these things, which actually led to the substitution of human mental effort, brought the third industrial revolution. Correct? But today we are talking about fourth industrial revolution. What is fourth industrial revolution? It is the convergence of manufacturing technologies along with the digital technologies, internet technologies, and the wireless technologies. So convergence of IT, OT, autonomous machine, advanced robotics, big data analytics, Internet of Things, correct? Cloud computing, smart factory, AI and machine learning, and of course, this all includes cyber physical system. So today, the most, I'll say, the one of the modern manufacturing strategy, or we can say philosophy, which we are talking about today, is the Industry 4.0, which is called fourth industrial revolution. So I will talk more about it now, because this is also known as smart manufacturing. So here in this slide, if you try to see, correct, the idea is that we are trying to show you the level of complexity. On the right hand side, you can see that it is the level of complexity that is increasing, and here it is the timeline on the x-axis. So at the end of 18th century, it was the time when industrial revolution was first industrial revolution started. So here basically the water power or the steam power that was used to drive the machines, production machines. Then in the beginning of 20th century, so that took approximately 100 years, you can see, people talked about continuous production on a continuous line. So that was the beginning of Industry 2. And the third industrial revolution was through the use of electronics and IT, further progression in the autonomous production. So when this microprocessor was developed, so it started in the beginning of 1970s or so. So when the electronics was developed, when microprocessors were developed, so human mental effort was also replaced by these things. So numerical control machine tools were started developing, some robot concept was developed. So all these things, programming logic controllers were developed. And today what we are talking about is Industry 4.0, that is the fourth industrial revolution, that is based on cyber physical systems. So I'll explain now this particular part, that is the Industry 4.0. So the at the heart, basically, we can say it is the cyber physical system. So for Industry 4.0, we are having cyber physical system at its heart. So what is there? Like, it is the digital information. It is the information is at the core. So this is the digital information which is at the core. So we have huge information database today. That is a digital information. So we need to have typical algorithms. We have to deal with this big data. So we need computational algorithms which may be needed in order to dig out this big data, in order to find out useful data for your application, for your purpose. And then you need to use artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms to find out the data which is of your purpose, of your optimum data, we can say, correct? And then this data has to be communicated at various physical locations where there are manufacturing machines or systems which are to be controlled accordingly. So basically this entire digital system which you want to develop is known as cyber physical system. So a cyber physical system is a system of collaborating computational elements controlling physical entities. CPS are physical and engineered systems whose operations are monitored, coordinated, controlled, and integrated by a computing and communicating core. They allow us to add capabilities to physical systems by merging computing and communication with physical processes. So this is the definition of a cyber physical system. Now, what is there in today's factory? Like I think many of you might have already visited a company. Maybe like those who are in Chennai, they might have gone to TVS, their assembly line they might have seen. You might have also seen assembly line like we in Delhi near NCR, we visit, say, assembly lines of Maruti or maybe Honda, correct? So those lines are like this as they have been shown in this particular slide. So they are rigidly sequenced automobile manufacture on a production line. So basically what happens there, that there are a number of workstations. They may be 50, 100 sometimes. And there's a workflow, like on different workstations, there's a very specialized kind of job that is being performed by a specialized kind of manpower who only is specialized to that particular work. So what happens in this kind of production, that at the end of the day, like at the end of a shift in the evening, for example, every day you are able to assemble, say, 120 cars or maybe 700 bikes, depending upon the kind of product you are having. Like this kind of assembly line or a production line, that is for not only for making, not only it is like what happens is that it is completely this thing, that it's not only the complete product but intermediate products also, like engine assembly. So engine assembly itself is something which is a very important thing, and it is also being done on a assembly line like this only. So that's how the today's factory, which is based on the production line continuous manufacturing concept, it is a rigid sequenced production line. But what I have seen, like last year, I had a chance to visit like Germany, and I had a chance to visit, say, this what is this called? Audi, not Audi, sorry, Mercedes-Benz and Porsche. These are the cars. So I have seen their manufacturing systems, and I could realize that they are not completely rigid sequence manufacturing. Like what happens generally that if you have to change from one car model to another car model, you have to have a different assembly line. But in Germany, like I have observed that in a one assembly line, they are able to assemble different models of the same car. So they are definitely, if not fully flexible, but they have already moved towards having these assembly lines to be partially flexible kind of production lines. So today, what we talk about the future technology, or maybe the technology which is to be introduced now, that is known as industry smart manufacturing or industry 4.0, that is decoupled, fully flexible and highly integrated manufacturing systems. So the production lines which I have observed in Germany, they do not completely fall in this category. So they are definitely in between, correct? They are in between this and this. They are in between, correct? So what we are talking today, what we are actually talking today in smart manufacturing, that it is a decoupled, fully flexible. So what does it mean? That here, these are various workstations. There may be different manufacturing machines too. So they are all being driven by the data which has been derived or which has been taken from that cyber physical system, and that data is driving these workstations or machines which are physically at different locations, and these machines are able to talk to each other. They are able to communicate with one another, and they are able to take a decision. I will show you in my next slide that what are the 6 design principles, what are the expectations from this kind of manufacturing scenario. So we try to take, develop such kind of manufacturing system which is highly decoupled, it is flexible, and it is also integrated, so you are able to manufacture the product. So this is what is the concept of tomorrow's factory. So there are basically 6 design principles which have been proposed. One is called interoperability. Interoperability means the ability of cyber physical systems, that is human and smart factories, to connect and communicate with each other. That is called interoperability via Internet of Things or and Internet of Services. Then virtualization, a virtual copy of the smart factory which is created by linking sensor data with virtual plant models and simulation models. So that is called virtualization. And then cyber physical decentralization is the ability of the CPS, that is cyber physical system, within the smart factories to make decisions on their own. Real-time capability is that to collect and analyze data and provide insights immediately, so immediate correction. Then service orientation through Internet of Services, and modularity, that is flexible adaptation of smart factories for changing requirements of individual modules. So this is how there's the 6 design principle which are to be embedded to this kind of manufacturing philosophy or system which we are trying to actually conceive today. And definitely the work is going on, and today there is a lot of emphasis of our government also, like the Department of Science and Technology has already sponsored 25 technology innovation hubs. You might have heard about it, TIH, at different, say, IITs or NITs or institutes of low importance, national importance. They are developing cyber physical systems for various applications, including of course the manufacturing is one of the focused area. So what are the building blocks of Industry 4.0? Means what technologies you are needing if you really want to implement smart manufacturing. So you need to, of course, there's a big data. You need to have big data analytics. You need to have virtualization, so augmented reality, virtual reality. You need to do simulation. You need to do vertical and horizontal integration. You need to apply robotics concepts or cobotics concepts, and there has to be, IoT, iOS concept is there. Cyber security, because everything is digital. So cyber security is one of the important features which you are supposed to have. And then you are supposed to have the additive manufacturing. So additive manufacturing comes here, that you have to see that in case of smart manufacturing, this additive manufacturing is something which has been proposed as a tool to monitor and to manufacture the various components. So this is what is the importance of additive manufacturing here. So what we are talking now today, we are actually talking about the digital enterprise. What does this digital enterprise means? That we are talking about entire value chain that is being digitized and integrated. So what do we start with the digital world? So our product design is digital, planning is digital, production engineering is something where we start doing the transition. Production is where we start making the physical components, we provide services, and finally, actually, we are leading to the real world. So like there's a very smooth transition from digital world to the real world, and various technologies or various kind of philosophies which are actually required to do this smooth transition is about simulation, product lifecycle management, manufacturing execution systems, total integrated automation, and lifecycle and data driven services. So that's how it is the kind of digital enterprise which we are visualizing today, and that is how the entire value chain will be digitized. So what are the top 10 skills today like we are required for the smart manufacturing? Correct. This is one of the important slides. The sources, like this all material which I am presenting, they have been taken from different sources, and I acknowledge gratefully all the sources. I have written their references on my slides below. So like in the way we are doing the manufacturing, correct? So these are the top 10 skill sets: complex problem solving abilities, coordinating with others, people management, critical thinking, correct, negotiation, quality control, service orientation, judgment and decision making, active listening, creativity. So these are the skill sets. But when we move towards smart manufacturing, like there are a few more things which are very new. One is the emotional intelligence, correct? So this emotional intelligence is something which has to be there, because once you're working in this kind of environment, which is highly networked environment, it is almost manless environment. We have a very less number of people involved in the work. So emotional intelligence is something which is very important. And then it is the cognitive flexibility. So these are some important points which are to be addressed, which the kind of skills which we have to develop in our coming manpower or coming engineers in order to take such challenges. But definitely the time is not very close to us as far as our country is concerned. But yeah, definitely we have to slowly move in this direction so that we can develop our industries for the most modern concept of smart manufacturing. So as I titled my talk, like how it is going to impact, correct? So obviously this kind of manufacturing system is going to impact the individual, it is going to impact the society, correct? Then business, economy, and of course finally the nation and global economy of any country, and of course the world also. So that's how this is something which becomes a very important tool for all of us. Okay. So now, so this is one part of my presentation. So let us take, like this is already, so we can take question answers for 5 minutes, and then I'll move to because I have already told that additive manufacturing is something which is very important tool, correct, for this kind of smart manufacturing. So I will now focus mainly on additive manufacturing because that is my core research area. So I'll focus on additive manufacturing. spares, overhaul, maintenance. So all those things I'll try to discuss with you. So definitely before moving to that, I want that in case if you have some questions from this part of my talk, we can take that. So is it there? I think if there's any question from this part of the talk, we can take it. Yeah.
Participants, if you are having any query, yes.
So koi please let us you can speak also, just keep on speaking from one side becomes very awkward and boring sometimes. So please talk. You can come on the screen and talk to me. Yeah.
Good morning, Professor.
Yeah, please tell.
So in your
You can switch on your video also. Why you're not switching on your video?
oh, I'm sorry, Professor. Actually, my system is making some fault. I need to restart again. That
Okay,
is the
please
reason
tell
why I
me. Yeah.
couldn't.
Tell me like this only. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned about in Industry 4, additive manufacturing is the key manufacturing component.
Yeah.
But why not the subtractive or other manufacturing process play
This
a
is
vital
this
role
is
in
this is
Industry
really
4?
this is really a good question. Actually, frankly speaking, I am also not very convinced. But this is what literature says. Correct? I am
Yes.
also not convinced about this, that why only additive manufacturing, because there are other processes. Sometimes they may be needed, and because everything you cannot achieve from additive manufacturing. So I am not fully convinced with this, frankly speaking. Yeah, you are right.
Thank you, Professor. And the one more question, may I add?
Yeah.
Actually, the additive components are still is being suspected for the anisotropic. How we can give the
No,
complement?
there's nothing like suspicion, correct? Anisotropy is there in AM components, but definitely you can make use of that anisotropy. You cannot say that anisotropy is something which is so bad that it cannot be used at all. That's not the case. So you
Yes,
can
yes.
always minimize the anisotropy. That is one thing. And second, you can develop solutions where anisotropy is required. Third thing, and suppose you have a very peculiar solution, you have very peculiar problem that anisotropy is not needed at all. In those cases, I will say that additive manufacturing will not qualify to be the correct process. Correct?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other question? Any other question from anybody? I think there are
Before
30.
speaking, please unmute your mic.
35 participants are there, 34. So some of you can ask, because continuous keep talking, it becomes very difficult. There has to be a dialogue. So that I also feel that kind of interaction. It should not be just that I keep on talking.
I think, sir, there are no more queries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let me proceed further. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me proceed further with this thing. My another presentation. So okay. Okay, so I'll not explain so much, because I think So you already had some introductory lectures on additive manufacturing. So, but my way of telling certain things are little different. So you may probably enjoy, or I don't know. So like this additive manufacturing today, what we are talking, or we are calling it as 3D printing, it is something which started with rapid prototyping, correct? So if you see this particular diagram, which I have picked it from some standard book of CAD/CAM. Here, the idea that the design process starts with the design need, and with the design need, we keep on moving ahead with relevant design informations and feasibility study, and we move ahead with design of the component, and after that, after the design of the component, what do we see is that we try to, you know, yeah, just hold on. So how to see this? Yeah. So this yeah. So here we try to see that we try to design, conceptualize, then we try to simulate. Once your this thing is simulated, then what to do, how to go ahead, correct? We can go ahead with some sort of analysis. So mostly in engineering we do finite element analysis, correct? And sometimes if it is a thermal or fluid mechanics kind of problem, people do the CFD kind of things also. And then once the system is designed, the product is designed, we go for the optimum design of the product. Now, once you have created an optimum design, the next step is to go for design evaluation. So what is design evaluation? The design evaluation is about the design evaluation is about the making the thing, making the prototype, and then testing the prototype. So that is known as design evaluation. So this is the box. This is the activity, I'll say, where actually the prototyping started, or the concept of rapid prototyping becomes important for this particular activity, because this activity is a bottleneck, correct? Now, once your prototyping is successful, you go for the design documentation. After design documentation, you go for the production, but before production, you have to plan your production. That is called computer-aided process engineering. So you do computer-aided process engineering, you plan your production, and when you produce, you do the quality control, packaging, shipping, and the product comes to the market. So the time which is taken from this box, like design need definition, to the marketing, or when the product is launched into the market, this is called product lead time. So this product, in this entire product lead time, this design evaluation step is a bottleneck, because your product is new, the processes, the materials may be new, it may take a longer time to establish that product. So that's why the prototyping has to be quite quick. It has to be quick, it has to be efficient. So that's what the need of prototyping is there. So once you launch the product in the market, you go back and try to see, you go back and redefine your design need based on the customer's comments, based on the customer's review, correct? So that's how this design becomes a continuous process. Okay, so this is the prototyping which I'm talking about now, which is one of the bottleneck and can end up, extending the project a lot. So this prototyping or model making is one of the important steps to finalize a product design. It helps in conceptualization of a design. Before the start of full production, a prototype is usually fabricated and tested. So manual prototyping by a skilled craftsman has been an age-old practice for many centuries. So second phase of prototyping was, so like in the beginning, like generally this was a manual prototyping that was practiced. So the entire thing was done by a skilled craftsman. So they used to take very long time. So people tried with the soft prototyping. So soft prototyping is again good, but not so good because there are many assumptions involved. So today what we talk about is rapid prototyping, which is a layer by layer material deposition. So people started thinking about it in the early 1980s or so. And with the enormous growth in CAD/CAM technologies, mechatronics, automation technologies, we could develop these systems, which are the rapid prototyping systems. So the concept is very simple, that if you want to make a product like this, you can machine it, correct? Or you can join it, or you can deform the material like this. But here in this concept, actually, what we do, we try to deposit the material layer by layer. And this is a bottom up approach. This is in the beginning, there's nothing, but we are able to deposit the material layer by layer, and we make the component. So this is the concept. So I believe that you might have already read about these things by the previous speakers. Yogesh ji, can you comment on this? So should I continue or I should go for some advanced things?
You can continue, sir, this portion.
Okay. So like what happens is that the idea here is that the process starts with CAD modeling. So you first make CAD in the software, and then you slice the model. So you slice the model from bottom to the top. So if you slice it, that you want to intersect the horizontal planes. So basically you are slicing it, and once you slice it, you get this kind of geometry. But suppose you have some material, you have some sheet material, and you want to cut the material like this from bottom to the top. So you are able to cut the material and you want to deposit the material one over another, correct? So this is how the geometry will become. So if you cut the material sheets like this and stake the material, these sheets one over another, this is how you are going to get the physical prototype. Fine. So you have this physical prototype. But if you compare this prototype with the original CAD model, you will see that there's a deviation. There's a deviation in terms of, you know, having this thing, that you have this deviation and you can have this thing. There's a stair stepping effect. So this stair stepping effect comes because of the finite thickness. Like you can eliminate or reduce the effect of these staircases if you reduce the slice thickness. And then finished, of course, you will take this physical prototype and you will finish this physical prototype by this thing. So that's how by secondary operations you finish it. So I'll tell you what to do. Okay. So this is called RPA process chain. We do the CAD modeling before slicing. We go for another step, which is called STL file, which is known as tessellation. And then, so basically the sliced model is called layered model. So this layered model is used by the 3D printer or a RP machine, whatever you call. And this RP machine process software calculates the laser scanning paths or material deposition paths, depending upon the kind of technology it is using. And then basically you are making the post processing you are doing. So once you're testing, basically this, you're testing your prototype. So if it is found okay, you take it, otherwise you go back and do the change in your design. So like this is my product. I want to produce this product which has been shown here. So this is the example of tessellation. Like in tessellation, what do? In tessellation, we try to, you know, we try to approximate a free-form surface or maybe any surface, but it has been shown for free-form surface by small triangles. So it is a piecewise approximation of surface of CAD model by using series of triangles. So you are actually approximating this free-form surface into planar triangular small triangular surfaces. So this step is known as tessellation. Then you slice. So once you slice it, so basically in slicing you are intersecting the plane. You are intersecting the plane from you're intersecting the plane, horizontal plane to this STL file. So basically you are getting the nested polygons. So these are the nested polygons from bottom to the top, you can see. And this information is saved in standard formats like SLC or CLI format. So the generation of laser scanning paths or material deposition paths is another step based on the concept. So there are different technologies, like the technologies for deposition are based on either liquid based technologies are there, or powder based technologies are there, or solid based technologies are there. So I'll tell you some important and some very modern processes. I'll show you all those things. So okay. So then the last step is that once you are getting prototype made from any of these process, you have to post process it. So sometimes you have to do post curing, which is needed. In case of stereolithography, you need to remove the support structure because support structure is an inherent characteristic of this thing. And then you have to sometimes improve the surface quality or strength by polishing it, by painting it, by sanding it. So these are called post-processing operations of additive manufactured components. So basically what happens that from virtual CAD model, you are having the physical prototype in your hand in some time, in a small time, correct? Maybe few hours time. So that's why we call it as a rapid prototyping. So it's rapid. Okay. Now the next important point which comes is the generalized illustration of data. So which data, like what are the input data? So it's the CAD model. Obviously, I have told you, I have explained so many things to you. So we can start with the CAD model and we make the STL file, and after making the STL file, we go ahead by making the STL file and then we operate the 3D printer. Second thing, if you have a two-dimensional drawings basically, then even again you can use it. You can make a 3D CAD out of this 2D CAD, make STL file, and you can operate a 3D printer. The other one is the point cloud data. Like in case you are having a very old machine component, the drawing is not there, the drawing has been lost, or there's some other thing like you have you got some idol, some monument is there, you want to produce model of that. So you can do the scanning of that component using a scanner, maybe a white light scanner or maybe some other kind of thing. You can take it and you can do the reverse engineering. And once you do the reverse engineering is done by a software. So this point cloud data is used as an input, and you can use a reverse engineering software and create a 3D CAD, or sometimes from direct point cloud to STL file we are able to create. So you can operate the 3D printer. This is one of the interesting application of 3D printing. And then I'll say the most interesting one is the biomedical part. So even somebody can take MRI scan data or CT scan data, and you can use softwares like Simpleware or maybe some sort of Mimics kind of software, and you can create this STL file and then you can basically have this STL file with you and you can do it for you. So you can make the different medical models using this kind of technology. So I have already stated once again from this slide, I want to give you a message that why this rapid prototyping? Rapid prototyping in the beginning was a design tool. So if this new way of model making is introduced, you are basically having a concept that you are able to compress the manufacturing lead time by 90% or so. So this is what is something which we are able to do. So okay, fine. So that's why the introduction of this new model manufacturing concept of 3D printing or RP that can compress the manufacturing lead time. So what you can do, like when the design need is conceived and you are able to launch the product into the market, that can be squeezed. So that's why sometimes people call it as a tool to compress the time for development of a product. So that's the importance of the RP. Then basically we have numerous systems now. Today, as additive manufacturing, we have number of systems. But if you want to classify, the classical classification is based on solid, like we based on the raw material by which we start our process. So the raw material may be solid, and the solid may be in the form of either wire or maybe in the form of powder, maybe one powder at a time or a blend of a powder, and then and even it may be in the form of foil. So based on these concepts, we have different 3D additive manufacturing processes. I'll show you those processes. And then liquid, or otherwise you have liquid. So the liquid, if you are having a liquid, the concept is polymerization, through which we convert liquid to solid. And this polymerization may be based on the thermal polymerization, it may be based on UV polymerization, it may be based on laser polymerization or some other kind of thing. So like different processes have been developed based on this entire matrix which you are observing here. So I'll try to show you some more processes so that you can enjoy those processes. So okay, so from this part of my presentation, if you have a question, we can take up those questions and then again I will proceed. Yeah.
Good morning, Professor. Again, Balakrishnan from Kumaraswamy College of Engineering, Karur.
Yeah.
Actually, Professor, what is the key skill or expertise required in additive manufacturing in if any processes, since it looks very easy and simple in manufacturing of complex shapes and variety is possible and lead time can be minimized. In this, what is the skill, maybe design area or the engineering of material science, which is the key skill requirement?
Key skill requirement is that you have to, like there are number of aspects I can tell you. Design for a component for additive manufacturing, that is one area. Like those marketing people who may be approaching you, correct?
Okay.
They projected that it is very simple, that you can, it's like printing a paper, like you type something on Word, MS Word, and print a paper, like
Yes.
the way these people are telling. But frankly speaking, it is not a fact.
Yes.
You need to have expertise, correct? And the expertise comes when you start working on a particular system. Now I will tell you, like you will see in my forthcoming presentation, that so many processes are there now, maybe 8 to 10 processes, and I will also show you the metal processes, correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
So for every system, the expertise is needed. And I will not say that, like if making the component is one way, designing the component for a particular additive manufacturing is another aspect, correct? Materials are generally limited. Like for a particular process, you will find that materials are generally very limited. So like if you are talking about say stereolithography, you have very few materials only which are supplied with the machine, and only those materials you can do. If you want to say use powder systems, you can play, like powder systems are, I will say, most flexible system where you can try number of materials, correct? So if
Yes,
you're
Professor.
trying different materials, it's not easy because you have to optimize the process parameters for that particular material. You have to see the accuracy, you have to see the repeatability, because shrinkage is something which is very difficult to control in case of polymers. So when you change from one material to another material, and if the material is new and the data is not available that how to proceed, you have to perform a lot of experimentation. So it's not only a technician job. Like I can tell you that it is definitely a skilled job to
Yes,
run it
Professor.
3D printer. It's not that somebody who can run a lathe can learn this 3D printing operation in few days. That's not the case. So you
Okay.
need to have expertise in terms of CAD modeling. You need to have expertise in terms of design for additive manufacturing components. You need to have expertise in terms of handling these softwares, because these STLs which you make, they are also defective, correct?
Yes,
And
Professor.
once the STLs are defective, you have to use again your skill to correct that. There are many ways, like the automatic softwares are there which can correct your STL to a lot of extent, but you should not do it, because sometimes there are situations you are unable to do it automatically, you have to manually do it, or sometimes even the situation comes that you have to go back and correct your CAD model. So it's not that simple, that correct. So
Yes.
definitely in every stage the expertise is needed. So that's why additive manufacturing itself becomes an area. And I will tell you that when you change from one printer to another printer, again you have to face the you have to learn a lot, because every printer has its own way of interpreting and doing the things. So it's not that definitely one can pick up better if you have expertise in one second one, but you have to learn that also. Is it clear?
Yes, Professor. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other question anyone is having?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please tell me.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sir, myself, Ramakrishna Hegde from Srinivas Institute of Technology, Mangalore.
Yeah.
Actually, I got a doubt regarding the deposition of layers. So you
Yes.
said the various technologies are used for deposition of layers. And
Yeah.
how do you actually handle, especially the liquid-based this one deposition using the stereo
Yeah,
lithography?
yeah, that will come just now. I'll show you. Huh? So your question will be answered.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Anybody else is there? Any other question? Okay, so if there's no question, I'll proceed further now. So I'm sharing my screen once again. Okay, so you can see the stereolithography slide now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in stereolithography, what happens is that you are having basically this vat. Here you are pouring photosensitive resin, which is actually a monomer, and it has a very unique property. somebody was asking, Dr. Hegde was asking this question. So like the unique property is that when this is a monomer, it is a liquid resin. When light above certain frequency, certain threshold frequency falls on it, it will, the bonds will break and new bond formation will take place. So long chain molecules will form. These long chain molecules are nothing but the polymerization process. So from small monomer molecule, these monomers will form chains. So huge long chain molecules will form, and that's why the density will increase and this liquid will convert into solid. So what is being done, that suppose the area of this platform is A and you are pouring liquid here, this liquid, and the thickness is at 250 microns, say for example. So you'll pour a liquid equal to area into 250 microns, so it will spread. Then the laser will come from the top and this movable mirror is numerically controlled. It is being controlled by the digital data, which we have already calculated. So this laser spot will move on this surface of the liquid. So wherever this laser spot will go, below which there will be polymerization reaction, and that thing will convert into solid. So that's how you are depositing one layer, correct? Then this platform will go down. You will pour another liquid that is again equal to AT. Second layer will be formed. Again, the laser will come from the top and it will deposit all this thing. So that's how, it will keep on depositing and you will basically have this support structure like this, correct? So if there's any overhanging features there, you need to deposit the support structure also. So this is how we are converting the liquid into solid. Is it clear, Mr. Hegde, now? Dr. Hegde, is it clear? Dr. Hegde from Mangalore.
Yes, sir, it is clear now.
Okay.
Clear now.
So you will keep on depositing the material from bottom to the top, and like, because it is a liquid resin, so the polymerization reaction keeps happening. So generally what is being done, once you are able to make this component here, you take it out and you keep it in a furnace so that complete polymerization takes place. So that is called a post-curing action. Later on, post-curing action, you need to remove this support structure also. So that is another step, correct? Then we have this powder fusion technology. It is for powder bed fusion technology. It is for polymers. We call it SLS, selective laser sintering. And if we are doing it for metals, we call it selective laser melting technology. So what we are doing here, instead of having liquid, we are having powder. And this powder is spread on this platform by a recoater or by a roller. So the thickness here is around, say, 200 microns or 100 microns. This thickness, which is appearing very large here in this picture, it is hardly 150 microns or 200 microns. And similarly, the laser comes from the top. And when the laser comes, these powder particles, they melt from their edges and they get fused with the neighboring particles. So that's what the mechanism of sintering is there. So we are able to form the solid lump. So this entire process is carried out in a closed chamber, and we are keeping the atmosphere, in case of polymer, generally nitrogen atmosphere. But if we are if we are doing processing metals, we are keeping inert atmosphere, correct? Generally the temperature ranges is around 300 for polymer processes, but for metal machines the temperature goes up to 1400 degrees Celsius or so. So this is, once again, you can see this is how the powder is being spread by the recoater. Then platform moves down, the laser is exposed. So this brown color thing is actually the sintered material. Then we are having this platform goes down and you are again recoating with the next layer, and the process is repeated. So the one advantage which we are getting here, that here this yellow color is the powder which is sitting its place. It is not sintered. So it acts like a support structure. So in this case of in this class of processes, there's no need to deposit support structure. So that is the advantage of these processes. Then this is that 3D printer, which I believe most of you might have already seen. This is called fused deposition modeling or fused filament modeling. So here we are having a filament which comes out from this nozzle. There are counter rotating rolls and it is being pulled in. It comes out from this nozzle and you are able to deposit the material from bottom to the top the way it has been shown in this picture. So this is called fused filament modeling. Now if you are having sheets, this is called laminated object manufacturing. So in laminated object manufacturing, what do? We take this sheet material and we try, this sheet material is adhered on this platform by this laminating roll, and the laser comes from the top and it cuts the material. So the function of laser here in this process is to cut the material. The function is not to remove the material. That is what somebody has to see. So and then we go ahead and we try to, the platform goes down and once again you put another layer and keep on doing like this, and later on this cubical things we remove. So the rest of the thing is actually your component. So then it is the latest process, I will say, latest concept, not process. One of the latest concept, I must say, it is called LENS, laser engineered net shaping. It is for, this is also known as powder blown process, correct? So here what do? We try to deposit the material. There are nozzles here. I'll show you the video also so that you will understand now after some time. So the powder stream comes down and the laser is coming from the center, it melts and the powder stream is there, which is being deposited on this XY control platform. So you are able to make these kinds of components which have been shown here. So this is powder blown process, a very interesting process. Like this is how the process zone looks like. So the powder is coming from these channels and the laser is coming from the center, and this is how the powder looks like. So it can be even used to repair the components, correct? Where there's a worn component, you can repair. And this is the interface of a powder bed process. Like there's a complete layer of the powder, say some aluminum based powder, and the laser is coming from the top. So this area is being scanned and it is being sintered. So you are able to produce a component like this using this particular process. Okay. So before moving ahead and going to the applications, let me show you some set of slides which I have made very recently. Okay, so these are some very modern processes, correct, which have come across us. So you can see these processes. One is called WAM, wire arc additive manufacturing. So here it is like welding only, correct? So there's a wire feeder and there's a torch and you are able to deposit the material like this. You can see here on the video that is illustrating the concept of WAAM process. So it is a pulse, you can see that is coming. So it is a variation of a direct energy deposition technology, uses an arc welding process to 3D print metal parts. Process is controlled by a robotic arm. So the source I have shown here on the bottom from where these things have been taken. So just try to see this video. You will enjoy this video of LMD process, metal additive manufacturing process, which is something similar to LENS. So the powder is coming down and the powder comes and the laser is from the center. Okay, so this is about the, so like you can see various materials which one can deposit. There are titanium alloys, stainless steels, maraging steels, tool steels, aluminum alloys, like refractory metals like tantalum, tungsten, niobium, super alloys like incolal and hastalloy, nickel copper alloys, and other specialty materials, composites, and functionally graded materials. They can be deposited by this kind of process. So this is about this thing. Now the next one, so you can just have a look that I have already shown you, that in VAM you are using actually robot, correct? So you are able to see this, I think. Okay, so there are various benefits of VAM. So there's a wide range of deposition rates, very low to very high, near net shape, production of the component, very less material loss, conventional machining time reduced to minimum, reduced lead times, good structural integrity, low to medium complexity components can be produced. But the limitations are there are high residual stresses and there may be distortions because of that. You need shielding gases and the resolution is low as compared to other processes, and also you need to finish them via machining. So these are some examples, like these are some components which have been produced by this VAM process. Then electron beam additive manufacturing is another important area which you have to see. So what is being done here, that there's a powder bed fusion, but is being done through this electron beam gun which of high energy beam of to 3000 watts. So the beam melts each layer of powder metal to desired geometry, and it's a vacuum process, so it eliminates impurities and yields excellent material properties. Then we have EBAM process, which is a wire based also. So instead of powder, we are having a wire feeder, and then electron beam is coming and it is melting and you are able to deposit it like this. So this is another version of the process. So it has advantages and limitations too. So it can make full density functional parts. Use of an electron beam offers extensive features such as higher build rates due to increased penetration depths and rapid scanning speeds, can efficiently assist developments and modifications of products, especially for complex, difficult to fabricate components. High process temperatures gives low residual stresses and eliminates need for heat treatment after the build. EBAM still has a few process deficiencies such as process stability, part defects, and quality variations. Correct? So these are some application areas. Some examples have been shown here. So you can just have a look. Then LMD process is same, lens, DED, LMD, they are the same names developed by different people. So basically there are powder streams and there's a laser from the center you are able to deposit. So I've shown a very good video about it. So it's a novel technique, combines laser and material processing. So there's a moving nozzle to melt ejected molten pool, and there's a layer by layer fusion, and these are the some properties. So the challenges are here, like process structure property relationship is still not developed. There's a complex thermal histories, anisotropy is there, and it's very expensive system. DED machine that I have already shown, it's almost same, correct? Only the difference is that here you will have this platform moving. So again, pros and cons are similar. So basically there are various applications in aerospace, automobile, repairing of components, nuclear and medical components. Then this is another technology which is called multi-jet fusion printing technology. It is by HP, correct? So here I won't be able to give you much details because like you can see how the process works. There's a powder recoating, and then we are actually putting this some chemicals on it. So there are fusing agents and there are detailing agents. So there are actually two things, detailing and fusing. These are the two steps to form a layer in this particular process. So different materials are there like polyamide, or we have thermoplastic polyurethane for making flexible components. So we are able to make different kinds of things using them. So it is a high resolution process with very high dimensional accuracy, and it gives you shorter lead times with respect to SLS process. And there are many other limitations too, that limited materials is the main limitation, correct? Their parts are rougher as compared to stereolithography. And so these are various components which have been made by this particular technology. Then DLP is another which is a technology which has come, digital light projector, 3D printer. So you can just have okay. So this is how the principle is, that we are having some digital this thing, and the UV light comes in one go. So instead of scanning using laser spot, in one go you are actually able to expose the entire photopolymer with that light. So it becomes faster. So the advantages here are that it is a faster process when the sections are little larger, but detailing you cannot do. I think when you need to make very fine features and the component is also thinner like this, I believe probably SL may be a better option. So so definitely it is very difficult to compare the two processes, but because specifications will also lead, but definitely DLP may be faster if the sections are larger. And so these are various components which have been developed using DLP kind of process. So advantages may be said as little higher speed than SLA, and then less time required to cure single layer, and excellent accuracy of laying, we can say, and the cost is little higher, consumable materials. So again, the material is a limitation because you will have very limited number of material. Then 2-photon polymerization 3D printing is another interesting process that you have basically this. The concept is that you have lasers like this, and it's a converging laser. So this is the concept, like where the intensity will be above certain threshold, you are able to, deposit, the polymerization will take place only in that location. So that's how the voxel is being made. So voxel is as small as 100 nanometers. So what happens is that the resolution is very low, correct? It's nanometer. So it's a high resolution process, correct? And the challenges are that biocompatible initiators are needed, reactive water-based systems in a monomer with low toxicity. So all these are the limitations, but it is a process which can produce, it has applications in various areas. You can just have a look on the various areas. They may be tissue engineering, metamaterials, plasmonics, photonics, so many other things. So these are very fine components you can see, which are made by this 2-photonics process. So it is a 60 micron is the size. So for making micro components with nano resolutions, this is one of the very important process which has been there. Then we have another Markforged 3D printer which can make composite components, correct? So you have this composite components. So you may have a fiber spool, you may have a nylon spool, and you can make the components. So different kinds of materials are there. Even sometimes you have material which is a combination, correct? So different composite like glass fiber composite, carbon fiber composite, Kevlar composite, HT fiberglass composite, all these things you can produce in this component. So these are the specifications, and this is material. This is all known to everybody. So you can see that different materials, they can be processed using this kind of printer. Okay, so these are some components which have been produced by this printer. Okay, so so thank you very much. These are the printers. This droplet based manufacturing is something which is again, it is a research level, I'll say, because these electrostatic forces are used to take the droplets out. So that's a research issue. You can see these are only papers on which it has been written. So these are some components which have been made so using this kind of printer. Okay, so thanks a lot. This is all about what I wanted to convey to you. Thank you very much for your patient listening. And if you have any question, please let me know. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Professor. This is Balakrishnan from Kumarasamy College, Karur, Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
It's very, very well explained, Professor. I am really inspired about your lecturing and the things which you explained.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, sir. Actually, what are the common defects that would occur in any additive manufacturing or all the manufacturing process? Maybe you can classify into polymers and metals. What are the common defects that would occur?
Like,
and what are the?
I tell you, like every process has its own defect. Like in FDM, we have voids, correct?
Okay.
We have core voids, we have sub-perimeter defects, we have one more kind of defect. Porosity is generally a very common defect which is there in case of powder-based processes, correct?
Okay.
If the parameters are not properly controlled, then there may be residual stresses and there may be distortion because of the, so edges may not be straight, they may bend like this. So those kinds of defects are also there in case of powder based processes. So residue, because there is a very complex thermal history in most of the metal additive manufacturing process. So they lead to distortion and residual stresses. That is the basic defect. And porosity, inherent porosity is another problem because there's a solidification. So because there's a metal solidification, melting and solidification. So the defects which are in casting, they are most likely to be there.
Thank you, Professor. And is there any NDT which is implemented to identify
non-destructive testing?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, definitely. People are actually like all these metal components. People are doing all these kinds of tests like ultrasonic test or maybe X-rays or all those NDT tests the people are doing for testing such components for internal defects.
Okay, Professor. Thank you. Thank you. And is there any standard applied for this has to be passed this one, then only it can be applied for
standards? Like standards are being developed now. They are under process. So that this is actually the limitation. That's why many aerospace companies, they are not accepting the components which have been manufactured by additive manufacturing. The reason being that we do not have very special standards for additive manufacturing. So that is a big area actually where people can work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.